In the grand scale of things, Tesla's most important things to least important, where does it fall within that?
I mean, it's got to be up there. Compute is everything. Training compute and inference compute is the key. They want to make all their cars drive themselves safer than a human all around the world. That's going to require a lot of compute. They want to make humanoid robots that are, almost as smart as humans. This is probably there with battery cells and power electronics as really some of the most key supply deals they could possibly make.
Welcome to the Gigacast. My name is Gav, here today with Sawyer and Omar, and things are happening in the world of Tesla. A massive deal was just signed with Samsung. Before we get into it, for those watching here on YouTube, 70% of y'all are watching these videos but not subscribing yet. Help us help you. Go ahead and smash that subscribe button. Let's dive right into this episode. So, Sawyer, I don't know if everyone fully has a grasp on what's been happening with Samsung, with Tesla. Could you break down the details for everybody?
Yeah, so a few days ago, Samsung came out with an announcement saying they signed a $16.5 billion deal with a customer to produce chips, but they weren't allowed to disclose that because the customer wanted it to be private. And I think someone had said, or some like maybe Bloomberg or Reuters had said it was Tesla, and then Elon just came out with a post saying Samsung's giant new Texas fab will be dedicated to making Tesla's next generation AI 6 chip. The strategic importance of this is hard to overstate. Samsung currently makes AI 4. TSMC will make AI 5, which is just finished the design phase, initially in Taiwan, and then the production will switch to Arizona later on. And then Elon goes on to say Samsung agreed to allow Tesla to assist in maximizing manufacturing efficiency. And Elon goes on to say, this is a critical point, as I will walk the line personally to accelerate the pace of progress. And the fab is conveniently located not far from my house. So I sort of looked it up, and it looks like, Evan, I don't know if I can put this in, if you can find that video that I posted of the actual chip fab under construction. But it's a $25 billion semiconductor fabrication facility in just about 45 or 40-ish minutes drive from Giga Texas. So Tesla's Giga Texas factory. And it sounds like as recent as late last year, Samsung was sort of like, do we continue with this factory or not? Because it sounds like they didn't have any major customers lined up yet. But then here comes Tesla with a huge order of $16.5 billion. And Elon later clarified in a reply to me that that's just really the bare minimum. I think the actual amount will likely be far higher if you include, all the AI 6 chips will go into the cars, but also into, Optimus robots and so forth. So this is a really interesting deal because this really like reduces risk, I think, from Tesla's perspective and getting out of Taiwan. It also, Samsung isn't really as good of a chip maker as TSMC. I know Elon kind of disagreed with that a little bit in a reply to Omar, but just in general, like TSMC is sort of looked at as the gold standard. So it's likely that Tesla was able to negotiate a pretty good price here, especially because there weren't any major customers lined up for this new Texas facility, which they really needed to get because it was costing them $25 billion. So they're localizing their supply chain even further, which is great. But the really unique thing is like they're allowing Elon to walk the line and help improve efficiency. So this will provide Tesla with really valuable industry knowledge and give Elon some special insight, and probably that he's never gotten before, into how to ramp these things, improve. Probably it'll help Tesla improve chip design just because Elon will understand the whole process even better. I think the fab comes online next year, I believe. I don't think AI 6 will probably start until maybe like 2027, 2028, probably more likely, because AI 5 probably won't even start going into vehicles until early 27. So it could be even later than that, honestly, for AI 6. So this is interesting because TSMC has sort of been the gold standard, and I know Samsung makes AI 4, but this is a really important win for Samsung, but I think this is going to be a great win for Tesla as well to gain that industry knowledge, and probably they locked in a really good price. So we'll see how it unfolds.
Yeah, a lot of good pieces there. Appreciate the breakdown as well as to what knowledge Tesla's gonna be able to get from this, what this allows Elon to do. Omar, you were talking about this a little bit on social media as well. Sawyer even pointed out a little bit of engagement there with Elon. What's your thoughts on all of it?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of Sawyer's points. I think this is a big win for Samsung. Their foundry business has been struggling. So getting Tesla as a customer for AI6 is a big win for them. And I think it's going to be a big win for Tesla too. Walking the line at the chip fab, that's not something TSMC would typically let their customers do. But for a company like Samsung that's in a little bit more of a desperate position, they are happy to do that for a customer like Tesla, a very public flagship customer like Tesla. But, really to me, the story is almost told backwards here. Everyone's talking about this Samsung deal, but, Samsung has been the partner to fabricate Tesla's first computer, the AI3 chip, and the AI4 chip. And those have been fabricated using an older chip making process in Texas. Texas is actually a huge chip fabrication center in the United States.
AI4, I think, is on the 7 nanometer process. Is that right?
Yeah. So I think the AI3 was maybe 14 nanometer. I think that the AI4 is 7 nanometer. And now they're going to 5 and then 2 nanometer with AI5 and AI6. So, the really interesting thing here, I think, is actually that they're moving away from Samsung for their next generation chip for AI5. They had started working with TSMC for Dojo 1 and Dojo 2. And now they're actually moving production of the AI5 computer to TSMC as well. So this is a pretty big step. I think it's really a reflection of the fact that Samsung has been slow to scale some of these newer process nodes. They're not getting acceptable yields, and that's really why they've been losing so many customers to TSMC. So I had heard rumors over the past few years that they wanted to go to TSMC. Samsung came in and made them an offer that was so good they had to consider it, and that they were going to split production of AI5 between Samsung and TSMC. They've decided to go exclusive with TSMC for AI5, which I think is exciting in terms of the capability of that chip. I think a TSMC AI5 is probably going to be more powerful than a Samsung AI5 chip would be. I think it'll be delivered faster. I think they can deliver it on time. I think they can deliver it on scale. But they're kind of throwing Samsung a bone here and saying, look, we're not abandoning you. We'll be back for AI6. Hopefully you can kind of scale this up, and we're going to get much better terms on this AI6 chip. So this is really important strategically. They need tons of inference chips for their cars, for their robots. They need tons of training chips for their data centers. And they talked about AI6 kind of unifying Dojo and the inference chip together. So this is a really important strategic deal they're making here that's going to have huge implications for the products and how they perform.
I wonder if they're going to TMC just for AI5 because my guess is AI5 will first go into the Cybercab. And I wonder if Elon doesn't want to mess with, having issues with ramping. They probably just want all the chips that they can get. Ming-Chi Kuo, analyst Ming-Chi Kuo on X, I think he said Samsung's 2 nanometer process was having yields of like 40-ish%, I think. And I think TSMC was at like 70%. So that just sort of goes to show you the huge difference in output. So as you said, I think Samsung likely just came to them with an unbeatable deal and was like, all right, we'll go with you guys. And it's close to Giga Texas, which is great.
Yeah, exactly. So when we talk about yields in chip making, you make the chip. What percentage of the chips that come out actually work the way that they're supposed to? And for TSMC, they're the best in the world at getting those super, super tiny chips to work really well. Samsung is still struggling to ramp up some of their smaller chip making processes. But, if we give them a few years, if we maybe go to TSMC and give them a few years, give them the assurance that we're going to be the customer, can they get it up to speed? Maybe they can, maybe they can't. It's a little bit of a gamble. So far, their record hasn't been great, but I think Tesla is going to be able to secure much better terms with Samsung if they can actually deliver on building those 2 nanometer chips.
Yeah, 2 nanometer is definitely a key part there. Do you guys have any concerns with them switching between suppliers as they move through these different chips in regards to quality being similar, pieces along those lines?
No.
The TSMC chip will be better in pretty much every way that matters. I mean, TSMC manufactures the most advanced chips in the world. All of Apple's chips are made by TSMC. All of Nvidia's chips are all made by TSMC. So these are guys who know what they're doing. Handling Tesla's chip production compared to making the chips for all the iPhones and iPads and Macs and Nvidia GPUs in the world, this is a piece of cake for them. So I think it's going to be great for AI5. The chips are going to be fabricated in Taiwan initially. That's a little bit of a risk, but I think it's a pretty manageable risk overall. He did mention they're going to move the fabrication to Arizona's TSMC's Arizona plant, but then having it in Texas, right next to the Gigafactory, that's kind of the ideal place to do it, where it's literally being made right next door.
Do you, and this is obviously a long shot, but something that we've talked about with Tesla is the vertical integration and just how far Elon has gone to make sure that they have control. And chips are a really key part here. I remember back in 2020 where you were having these chip delays and then cars were taking forever. Do you ever see, I mean, obviously it's great that they're moving it to the US location. Do you ever see Tesla getting into this area potentially, trying to, even if it's pieces of it, create further vertical integration, or is this just out of their wheelhouse?
No, I mean, the amount of investment required to build like a single chip like Samsung's alone is going to be north of $25 billion. Like that's a lot. It takes years to build these things. You have to have incredible industry knowledge, and it's probably going to be extremely difficult to compete with TSMC, maybe even Samsung. So I don't see it. I don't see the reason to. If Samsung's giving them good deals and they're only a 40-minute drive from Giga Texas, just partner with them. Let Samsung take on the risk of building a $25 billion fabrication facility and just outsource it. I don't see a reason to bring it in-house.
Yeah, nobody fabricates their own chips. Apple, Nvidia, everybody. You don't really want to do it, and I could get into the reasons, but they're incredibly vertically integrated. Sawyer follows a lot of the legacy auto companies. I would ask him, Sawyer, what's Ford's strategy for their inference chips?
They don't really have one.
Exactly. I mean, typically the way it would work at Ford is they would contract out to another company that would write software for an off-the-shelf chip, right? It's like 3 or 4 different companies to come up with the solution. What Tesla's doing here, writing software, designing their own chip specifically for their car that runs their software really well. That's an incredibly deep level of vertical integration that you don't see anywhere else in the industry. And as they look at autonomy, scaling up robotaxis, scaling up humanoid robots, that vertical integration, that ability to design the chip and the software in the car all together is going to be really important. You don't see other legacy automakers thinking strategically about where their inference chips are going to come from. But Tesla's not only thinking about their current inference chips, they're thinking about AI5 and AI6 and AI7 beyond that. This is really going to be important for the future.
Just, I guess, a little bit of a technical question, but beyond the size of the chips, what is the biggest difference that you guys see from AI5 to AI6?
We don't know what the difference is between AI5 to 6, but Elon has said there's a 10x improvement in performance from AI4 to AI5. So we can probably expect something similar. There's obviously probably going to be power efficiency improvements as well, which will be important. But Elon did say there's still like a 10x, they can still do a 10x improvement in the amount of parameters, I think he said, Omar, right? On AI4. So they still have a ways to go to squeeze out some performance out of the current setup.
Yeah, they've really just started using the performance of AI4. V13 was the first update that took advantage of the AI4 computer. So obviously, when you make the transistor smaller, all the electrons are traveling a smaller distance. So the computation happens faster. That's a given. But really, you've seen scaling up the model as a way to make the cars more intelligent. Sawyer mentioned this 10x larger model on AI4. That's going to make the car more intelligent. Clearly, they've got a long way to go on AI4. But beyond that, having an inference computer that can run even bigger and more powerful models, that has more memory bandwidth, that's ultimately going to enable you to make the car smarter. So as they look at model scaling as a key way of improving intelligence, these new computers, these AI5 and AI6 computers, are really going to drive performance improvements in their self-driving model and really help them scale Robotaxi out across the world.
Elon said that the design of AI5 is now finished. I mean, why do you think it's going to take another year plus, probably more than that, maybe even a year and a half, to put these things into cars? Is it just like working out the yield issues and getting enough good enough yield to be able to produce enough, or is it just they just haven't tapped out hardware for it yet?
I think he's probably sandbagging a little bit because he doesn't want people to not buy the current cars. And I would definitely recommend people buy the current cars. They run the software great. I mean, you've got robotaxis running AI4 chips, but it takes some time. So you start production, then you need to validate it from an engineering perspective. Then you need to actually get the software to work on it. You're probably going to start initially putting it in low volume cars, maybe putting it in the Cybercab, maybe putting it in the SNX and the Cybertruck before getting it into Model 3 and Y. And then even after that, it's probably going to take about, a year to get the software to a point where it uses the extra power. So these transitions take time. I don't think he wants people sort of waiting for it. Earlier, he had said that AI5 would probably make it to cars by the end of this year, which is now. So I think they'll probably start introducing them next year. But really, it's going to be, 18 to 24 months before we see them using that extra power that's in AI5.
Actually, if people are worried about their car being obsolete because of hardware 4, maybe just consider leasing. If you're in the US, consider leasing 24 or 36-month lease. Take advantage of the $7,500 EV credit because you can on every lease, even if I think you're over the income limit for the point of sale rebate. And then just get a hardware 5 Tesla, in 2 to 3 years.
It's not a bad idea. All right, I want to shift us over a little bit to some other topics. Is there any other items you guys want to hit in regards to the chips before we move on?
One thing I forgot to mention was that it was an 8-year deal, so it stretches until the end of 2033. That doesn't mean it'll be like AI 6 the entire time. Maybe they would introduce AI 7 at some point. I don't know, but it's an 8-year deal. So that works out to like 2 point something billion a year. But as Elon said, that's just the bare minimum, so it's probably going to be a lot higher.
Omar, any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a really important strategic partnership that is really going to be key to delivering on the vision they've laid out.
In the grand scale of things, of, Tesla's most important things to least important, where does it fall within that?
I mean, it's got to be up there. Compute is everything.
Yeah.
Training compute and inference compute is the key to making their products do what they want to do. They want to make all their cars drive themselves safer than a human all around the world. That's going to require a lot of compute. They want to make humanoid robots that are, almost as smart as humans. That's going to require a lot of compute. So this is probably, up there with battery cells and power electronics as really some of the most key supply deals they could possibly make. And it's good that they're thinking ahead.
Okay. And then I suppose one last question on it. We know that this deal is in place now, 8-year deal. We have a couple thoughts here on AI6, AI7. What else are we watching for the future in regards to chips specifically? And this could be kind of like across the ecosystem.
I mean, probably the most important thing or the most interesting thing they're doing on the chip side is Dojo. So right now, all their training's happening on Nvidia. If they can meaningfully shift some of that over to Dojo, it could become a major strategic advantage and allow them to build 3x to 4x the compute for the same dollar cost. So what Elon was saying on the earnings call about unifying Dojo and the inference chips, maybe, having the same chip go in the car in the data center, that I think is really interesting. We've seen Google able to do most of their training on TPUs. If Tesla's chip making team can help reduce their reliance on Nvidia, that is probably the greatest accelerator they could possibly deliver for the business.
I think when Elon announced that XAI within 5 years, or by the 5 years from now, will have 50 million H100 equivalents online, I think a lot of people assumed, well, that could be Tesla's Dojo chip, but I'm not sure Dojo is quite competitive enough yet. Well, I mean, we'll see what Dojo version 2 is like later this year once it starts production, and I think Dojo version 3 will come out late next year probably. But if Tesla can actually make real headway in terms of closing that gap in performance and efficiency with Nvidia, that's a real game changer, because then Tesla can just do these things in-house at a much cheaper cost, much more efficiently, and could even start selling these things themselves to maybe competitors. So that's going to be super interesting to watch unfold.
Yeah, it's exciting. And I love how you harped on it, Omar, where this is really if you had to say, like, is this the heart or the brain when it comes to Tesla? This is kind of both, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so really the heart and the brain of what's going to drive everything as they create it. You're just not going to be able to get your hands on enough chips when it comes to, let alone the cars, but Optimus, and all these different areas. And obviously, when you look across the board with Elon's companies, it's not just Tesla, XAI, Neuralink, other items, even more computing power needed for some of these. So pretty good to have these relationships and deals in place, because as you build them out, it's just going to help you with your other companies.
One thing that sort of like I'm curious to see what happens is, like Meta, for example, just announced, or Mark did, like last week, I think, that, they're going to invest hundreds of billions of dollars into compute. And a lot of these, like the chips are improving so quickly. Like Nvidia's year over year improvements is like 2-3x sometimes. And a lot of these chips are kind of like, I don't want to say obsolete, but you kind of move on from them after like 4 years, maybe 5 years. And then maybe you decommission some of them. Like, what do you do with all these older 4 to 5 year old facilities? Do you just repurpose them, or do you can you recycle them? How does that work? You're going to have these super expensive centers that, you only use for, like, let's say a few years. And then what do you do with them? I don't know.
Bitcoin mining.
Yeah, maybe. Crypto.
I mean, I think, there'll always be a market for the hardware. You can kind of replace it with newer stuff. But yeah, this sort of vertical integration, designing the chip for the product, is really powerful. You've seen Apple use it to just have some of the best chips on the market. And when you're just sort of, let's say you're building a humanoid robot and you're just buying some Nvidia chip off the shelf, that might be designed more for data center use or for a gaming PC. Tesla knows that they want to design these chips to be super power efficient, to do all the things that they want to do. And that ultimately is going to help them build better products. This isn't going to be some chip that is powerful but sucks a ton of power. It's going to give them great range, great battery life for Optimus, as well as giving them the performance that they need.
I guess more what I'm referring to is, let's say you're a company, you spend $25 billion on a single facility, which is what XAI is about to do with their, I think, NVIDIA GB200 facility. 4 years from now, the GPU chips and the clusters are going to be so much more power efficient that the revenue, the amount of revenue that you extract per, let's say, per watt used or whatever, is going to be so much better than what that 4-year-old facility has. So basically, you spent $25 billion to use a facility for, let's say, 4 years. It's pretty wild to think about the amount of investment that's going to be required in the coming years. And because you don't necessarily want to keep using that old facility, because you got to build a new one with the newer chip, because it's going to result in you having a much better revenue per performance, whatever outcome, than your older facilities. That's sort of more what I'm referring to.
Yeah, I mean, these are assets that have a lot of value, even when we're 3 years down the road. They may not be the most cutting edge chips anymore, but you could probably sell the chips, maybe even sell the facility, generate some cash, buy some newer chips if that's what you want to do. They're still going to be useful. There's just going to be more powerful chips that come down the road.
Who has more computing power, Omar? Tesla or XAI?
Oh, XAI.
XAI.
Yeah,
By far?
like by 4x at least right now. Yeah. I think
Nice.
XAI, well, Tesla actually just announced, I think on the Q2 earnings call that they had 67,000 H100 equivalent unit power. XAI is at 210,000 right now. And they're just about to turn on another 110,000 units in the coming weeks, I think. And then eventually another 400,000 on top of that in the coming months. So yeah, XAI is way ahead.
Wow.
Yeah, I think part of this, and Tesla has plans to scale out to 100,000 and beyond too that they've laid out, but it's happened a little slower than we expected. I think we were supposed to be above 100,000 GPUs for Tesla right now at Cortex. And I think part of this is just that in order to be a public company and maintain profitability, that limits how fast they can build out just because they have to report the financials. XAI doesn't have to do that. They're a private company. So there's no problem for them building out as fast as they can, losing a ton of money on paper, but they only have to share that with their private investors.
If that's the case, then does it make sense to like go to the debt market or something, raise money just to, because if you can get robotaxis here sooner, if you just had more money, does it make sense to raise money?
Maybe it does. I'm not an accounting expert on, what that would all entail, but I certainly think that if Tesla could build out their training compute faster, you'd probably see robotaxi scale out faster. You'd probably see more FSD updates, all the things that are important to the business. So seeing them reach 100,000 GPUs and beyond for Cortex is probably one of the best leading indicators I look for as a Tesla investor.
That's why it's nice to be a private company, is because you can burn massive amounts of cash and no one really cares. As long as you're just ahead in the game, like that's all that matters. But public company, they want those earnings or quarterly reports, and it's just, yeah, it's tougher.
I was saying, not only does no one care, but they'll just keep investing in you at hundreds of billions of dollars of valuation, apparently.
Yeah.
No problem.
I mean, it's Elon we're talking about.
Idea from Evan, Tesla buys AMD. AMD market cap right now, 290 billion. What do we think?
No. How would that even work? A stock swap deal? Hell no. Just buy, just buy XAI.
AMD is a really interesting company because they make GPUs that do almost the same thing as Nvidia. They make training computers that do almost the same thing, but the software and the drivers make them kind of difficult to impossible to use, which is why almost nobody's using AMD for training. So I think if they had any alternative to Nvidia, if they could use AMD, if they could use Dojo, they would absolutely be using those, but they can't.
It's still so crazy to me that Lisa Su and Jensen Huang aren't they like cousins or something? And they're running these. Yeah, distant cousins. I don't think it's like one time.
Those Thanksgivings must be interesting.
Yeah, the competition is real. Okay, really, really good stuff. I want to shift a little bit over to a couple other topics. As we do so, for those watching here, if you made it this far in the video, please make sure that you have liked the video. Drop a comment below as well if you have any questions or if you have thoughts and opinions on the whole chips discussion that we just had, and make sure that you are subscribed just by tapping that subscribe button right there. Okay,
dude, Nvidia hit an all-time high today. Their market cap was almost 4.4 trillion. Like, that's insane. Wow.
Yeah, that move from 4 trillion to 5 trillion is happening relatively quick.
Yeah, really quick. Crazy.
And just compounding. First cousins once removed. Wow, there you go.
Okay. There you go.
Market cap. Yeah, they're going to have, what is it? It's already $500 billion lead. That's pretty crazy.
And, it's funny looking back at that sort of DeepSeek scare that happened a few months ago. Yeah. People said, oh my God, nobody's going to need NVIDIA chips anymore. DeepSeek has figured it out. And technical people said, no, I don't think that's the right takeaway. But it just shows how the market can completely miss a story sometimes temporarily and then come back and correct like you're seeing now.
Didn't like DeepSeek use Nvidia chips? Is that right, or am I
Yeah,
misremembering? There
yeah,
you
they
go.
did. I mean, these sort of highly technical things are often difficult for investors to understand, right? Um, so they're trying the best they can. Eventually, you can see the financial results and see that people are really needing more of these chips than ever.
It's not going to slow down. That is my not so bold prediction. Speaking of things that Elon has talked about, just real quick, looking back at last week's earnings call, we did a live stream afterwards where you guys covered most of your thoughts. But having had a week to digest, have you had any additional takeaways or questions or thoughts? Or is everything was pretty clear right after?
Yeah, my
I
thinking
mean,
hasn't evolved.
yeah, I'm kind of understanding what they were talking about by, the intelligence density of compute is what's going to matter. I think they were really talking about these chip deals.
Hmm.
Um, these chip deals are really kind of going to be core to delivering on their products. I think this is kind of what was on their mind in the earnings call, and they're really thinking far ahead into the future here.
Yeah, I'll give a shout out. There were people that I was doing spaces with back in 2021 who were all over chips and, this being the future. I think that there was like Kulikan Sofa, I remember, was like a big name that people were constantly talking about. Well, that stock hasn't done anything. And a few of these others that, have come to light. And obviously, Nvidia has really taken the cake there. AMD has had an awesome run recently. So I think that there's a lot of potential there. But, Tesla getting kind of into the game with designing and some of these other pieces makes stuff very interesting to me as well. Okay, we did get some new interviews from the Tesla team. Elon did an interview. Did he just do one interview? Was it with?
And you know what? One thing on Nvidia that's really interesting is how bearish people were right before this AI revolution took off. They said, "Oh, Nvidia, there's a crypto bust. Everyone was just using Nvidia for crypto." And the stock sold off massively.
Mhm.
It's really amazing how narratives in the market can just change completely 180, like we saw with Nvidia.
And even today, as good as Nvidia's done, I feel like they're still just kind of getting started with the amount of compute needed in the coming years, the amount of investment that these, the Metas and Googles and XAIs of the world are going to do. I think the amount of money that's going to be funneled to Nvidia is nuts.
Omar, what
Yeah.
percentage of your portfolio is Nvidia?
Let's see. Nvidia was never something that I consciously decided to make a large position, but it ended up growing to be a pretty big position. It's now about 20% of the stocks I pick, which is about 10% of my total equity holdings. So it's pretty significant. It's my number 2 largest position behind Tesla now.
That's awesome.
Nice.
So you got some Nvidia?
Nope, just Tesla.
Just Tesla. Just Tesla.
For better or for worse. Yep.
Yeah. The 100% approach. Okay, so Elon did talk a little bit. I believe he did an interview with John, right, from Tesla owner Silicon Valley. And there was also an interview with Lars. The big takeaway I heard from that was, them confirming that Elon was talking about Roadster in that tweet, which you had guessed, Omar, in that quote tweet as well. Oh, thank you, PC Gamers, for making deep learning possible. Care to elaborate on that one, Omar?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a tweet about Nvidia, right? They started off making gaming graphics cards for playing video games. So because people wanted to play video games, we ended up getting AI. And if people hadn't loved playing video games so much, there would be no AI revolution today. It just kind of goes to show you how tech trends that seem kind of frivolous can end up changing the world, right? People said, all these tech companies were just focused on social media and everything. Well, all these internet websites that seem kind of silly, things like Twitter, ended up creating these ad tech monopolies, building these massive data sets that led us into the AI revolution today. it's really difficult to predict where something's going to go. Even something that seems kind of silly down the road can end up changing the world in
What
tech.
what game do you think made the single largest contribution?
Oh, I mean, I don't know. Maybe
Thinking
I mean, it's
Minecraft.
hard to pick one, but yeah, really, there were a lot of games that people played on their PCs that made the AI revolution possible. Even things like Microsoft Flight Simulator, Halo, it
I was just
all
saying,
brought us here.
thank you, Call of Duty. I don't know Fortnite if we're counting you in that conversation. Came around a little bit later, but we'll count the others. Okay, so did you guys watch the interviews from the X takeover? Did you have some takeaways?
The Lars thing, I think, from memory, had two interesting points. Was just that he did confirm that the interesting or cool thing that Elon saw, that when he left the design studio, I don't know, 1.5 weeks ago on that Sunday night, was the Tesla Roadster demo, as we all suspected it was. So Elon said that demo will happen later this year. That absolutely includes the SpaceX package. Lars sort of hinted at the difficult engineering associated with that. But they've been working with SpaceX to make that work somehow. Yeah, it's going to be super interesting to see what that's like. And that the design of it has evolved, from when it was unveiled almost 8 years ago, which is crazy.
Wow.
And then the other thing was that they're maybe considering doing a smaller, Cybertruck. Not sure how much of a hit that would be considering the current sales of the Cybertruck. And I think that's it. That was really the only two tidbits that I can remember, at least.
Yeah, I think a smaller pickup truck could be interesting. I don't know if he said a smaller Cybertruck, so that could
True.
be
He might have just
interesting.
said pickup. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think for autonomy, having all these different form factors, vans, trucks, everything's going to be important. On the Roadster, it's a pretty interesting one. 8 years after unveil, the company has changed a lot. And I kind of love it as a Tesla investor that they're doing the Roadster, just a super fast performance car. That's the DNA of Tesla, right? That's where they started. And now they've really shifted from making these fast electric cars to making self-driving cars. But I think it's really cool that they're putting the Roadster out. Lars called it kind of a swan song, which I think is kind of sad. But,
Yeah, it is.
you know, I mean, they're kind of, for people who love the original Tesla, which is just really fast electric cars, I think it's really cool. They're kind of sticking true to their roots. This isn't a product that's going to do well financially. It's not going to be material to the company. It's certainly not the future of the company. But I think it's just cool to kind of pay homage to their roots in that way. And it's going to be a really fun product.
Lars has been putting out some good stuff lately. I see you guys interact with him a bunch. I like that he's active on social, obviously in a different way than Elon is, but just continuing to share good information.
Lars is sort of like your engineer's engineer. Like that dude just loves the art of engineering, the science of it, all of it. And he just loves to dig deep in the technical details of things. And he has a team of, he oversees like, I think 6,000 people,
Wow.
which is a lot of people. And his team just cranks out incredible things.
Yeah, you got to appreciate what these guys like Lars and Franz do. They've brought us all these vehicles that we love. And you got to feel for Lars when he's talking about integrating these cold gas thrusters into the Roadster. And, Elon just comes to him with some insane, goal that they need to do. Hey, let's put rocket thrusters on the Roadster. You go figure out how to make that work. And he's got to kind of actually make it a reality. That's not easy to do what he does. And to work with Elon for so many years and not get fired or not lose his mind. I'm really thankful that we have people like Lars there at Tesla.
It must be so fun, while simultaneously nerve-wracking to go into a meeting with Elon and be like, okay, what is he going to conjure up today? Like, rocket thrusters on his car? Okay, sure, we'll do that somehow. Yeah.
Yeah, open invite to Lars if you want to come on the Gigacast and talk with us about the tasks that you are given and the process of fulfilling them. We'd love to hear it straight from you. So that would be a good guest to get on here. Okay, good stuff there on the X Takeover. I want to talk a little bit about Robotaxi now because there has been some new updates. Specifically, dynamic pricing has been rolling out in Austin. For those who are unfamiliar with what's happening there, can you guys give some color? Maybe Sawyer?
Yeah, so when the Tesla's Robotaxi rides launched, it was a fixed price, no matter the length of the ride, short or long, of $4.20 per ride. A couple weeks later, they increased it to $6.90 per ride. Both were kind of just joke pricing, but now those are sort of gone. It's fully dynamic pricing, so if you have a shorter ride, it's a lower price. If you have a longer ride, it's a higher price. Tesla Chan is down there right now, actually, and he's already sort of looked at the pricing for some of the trips. And for example, an 11-mile trip across the geofenced area was $13.71, which is about $1.25 per mile. I did a Uber ride across the geofenced area, 8.6 miles for $17.93, which was $2.08 per mile, and that does not include any tip or anything. So obviously, like, the longer the ride, the lower it'll probably be per mile for Uber, but it gives you a general sense of sort of the difference between the two. Actually, if you click on, I'm trying to go down, Evan. Keep going into the replies. I think he had, let me put it in the Gigacast. He actually had a good breakdown.
Is his app in Chinese?
He's from Korea.
Okay, got it.
And I put it in the Gigacast group chat, Evan. So he sort of did like a rough breakdown of the pricing per mile, like how much a one mile trip costs, 2 mile, 3 mile. But nonetheless, like this is a good step forward. This is just means Tesla's getting closer and closer to sort of mass adoption, bringing out the service to the public. There you go. Again, these are really like loose numbers. It's not necessarily going to be the same for everybody, but it gives you a rough idea of what the pricing is looking like for shorter trips and then longer trips.
Nice.
Yeah. So I think this is a great step. You know, they talked on the earnings call about scaling out their Robotaxi service area to be 10 times larger than their current service area. You can't do that with a $420 or $690 flat fee. You have to have longer trips cost more than shorter trips. So this is an important step in that direction. You know, when they launched the Robotaxi service, we talked about how the flat pricing was temporary. So they're scaling very rapidly here, in my opinion. They have already expanded the Robotaxi geofence once to the dick-shaped area that includes downtown. In the coming weeks, they're going to expand that again. We're also seeing rumblings of them launching in the Bay Area. We did get that little agreement in our Robotaxi app that said, hey, if you're in California, you're going to have a safety driver. If you're not in California, da-da-da. So that, I think, is pretty encouraging. They're making the right updates here to pricing to make that happen. But, you know, when you look at companies like Waymo and how they scaled out, they were not making geofence expansions every week. So they're making a lot of good moves here. Next, I'd love to see them adding a lot more users, sending out a lot more invites for people to use the service, and eventually getting rid of invites. That, I think, is going to be really key. Some people have said, well, you know, why don't they put more cars onto the network? And we don't know quite how many cars they have. I think last time we counted, there were 11. You know, maybe they have more today, maybe they don't. But I think they're really going to be putting enough cars on the network to match demand. So the key is really to keep wait times low. Ideally, you want wait times to be below 10 minutes, right? Or even 5 minutes. So they're going to put as many cars as they need onto the network to be able to meet all the orders they're getting. First, you want to increase the orders. You want to send out more invites so that there's more rides being requested. And then it's pretty easy to throw more cars onto the network to handle those rides.
Got it. Okay. Omar, at what size, Evan wants to know, at what size what would he say exactly? At what size dong will you return to Austin for more Robotaxi rides?
I mean, I do want to return even just to try the downtown area. I think probably with the next geofence, maybe I'll come down for the Starship launch and go try out the new geofence as well. But I'm really excited for them to launch in California and to work through the permitting process there so I don't have to fly to Texas.
Best part. There you go.
And they did.
Yeah, so California, let's talk a little bit about that. Just latest updates. I know that we mentioned that it has Cali ride hailing is not live yet. Do you have expectations timeline-wise on when it would go live? And then what area of California you believe?
I think they have, well, I know they have the permit to already do this. So what they're allowed to do with their current, I think it's called a TCP permit, is that they can start a robot or a ride hailing service, we'll call it, with on it, but the car can use FST, but there has to be a driver in the driver's seat. It can't be like the Austin service where the car is driving itself, but there's like a safety monitor in the passenger seat. They're not allowed to do that in California yet. So it sounds like Tesla's going to at least initially launch with a ride-hailing service, a paid ride-hailing service for the public. Maybe invite only initially, I don't know, but it'll have to be someone in the driver's seat, a Tesla employee or whoever they have in there. But this sounds like this does mean that they'll have a larger geofenced area than what Austin has. So, for instance, I think based on the sort of rumors that we've been seeing, is that it'll be sort of a 75-mile long geofenced, and from top to bottom, it'll be about a 2-hour-long ride, all the way from north of San Francisco, all the way down to San Jose. So that's a pretty big geofenced area, much bigger than Waymo's. Granted, Waymo's are fully autonomous, but we've been seeing photos of Tesla Model Ys with validation rigs on top of them all around the San Francisco and the Bay Area. So they're clearly gearing up for something or for a launch soon. They were supposed to launch, I think, a few days ago, but my guess is there was a Democratic California regulator that posted on X, if Tesla does this with autonomous vehicles, blah, 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 they'll be impounded and blah, blah. So they probably were like, all right, let's take a few more days, make sure we're not going to piss anybody off. And we'll reassure them that these aren't going to be fully autonomous vehicles with no one in the driver's seat. But I think it'll launch soon. It's just a question of when.
Yeah, I think they're just about to launch. They've been running this rideshare service with employees for several months now, since at least April.
Yeah.
So the customer service is probably going to be pretty similar. And there will be somebody in the driver's seat. They won't do anything. They are just going to sit there, be ready to take over if needed. But it's part of the process for California. California has a much more extensive regulatory regime for self-driving than Texas does. So there's steps you need to go through. First, you need to launch with a driver. Then you can take the driver out in certain scenarios, but you can't charge for rides. Then you can take the driver out and charge for rides. So a lot of people will say, what's the point? Why do they have to launch with safety drivers? Isn't that just like Uber? Well, you could say it's like Uber because there's a driver, but in reality, the AI model is driving the car, just like in Texas. And these are sort of the steps you have to go through. Even Waymo, when they launched in California initially, had humans behind the wheel. So will it be cooler when there's a completely driverless car in California? Of course, absolutely. But this is another step along the way there. And honestly, it's happening much quicker than I expected.
Tesla doesn't yet have the permit to actually launch fully autonomous. Basically, they wanted to launch the same services that they have in Austin and California. They can't do that yet. They have the permit to launch a ride-hailing service with someone in the driver's seat, but it sounds like it's going to be another 1 to 2 months before they actually get the permit to be able to launch the same service in California as that they currently have in Austin.
Yeah, that's right. And I expect that the data they generate from this service, both with employees and with the public, is going to go a long way towards helping regulators feel confident in issuing that permit to them.
Besides for this additional rollout, It feels like we've hit a couple of big moments so far this year. Obviously, with the initial Robotaxi rollout, we just had earnings last week. What do you think Tesla investors right now are looking forward to next on the horizon, or is it really mainly focused on Robotaxi rollout? Because I think Optimus is a little farther away, right? The affordable vehicle, it sounds like that's also not necessarily going to happen in the near future. Is there anything, these next couple of months outside of the Robotaxi rollout that you guys are watching?
I don't think most people are bought in yet to the Optimus idea or even what that means long term. I think it's going to be a while before that we start to see a material impact to the bottom line from Optimus. I think short term, people are really just focused on what are these more affordable models and when is Tesla's lineup for vehicle lineup going to expand? How is that going to impact the business? What's the pricing going to be? So we'll learn that in the next few months.
Yeah, I think Sawyer hit the nail on the head. Optimus really, and it's amazing going to the Tesla diner and Optimus was serving popcorn, just hearing what some of the people said. I could hear people saying, "Oh my God, look at that. This is what we need to fold our clothes." The demand is absolutely there, but the product's not ready. And they're sort of going back to the drawing board and redesigning Optimus from the ground up with the Gen 3 Optimus, and they're hoping to get that into production next year. So that's still at least several quarters off, probably longer. Robotaxi, I think, is really the most important thing to watch right now. How fast can they scale that into a business that's actually material? Because then you have a growth story. So this is something that I'm watching carefully. Robotaxi, FSD updates to customers. And then, of course, there's the core auto business, which has been struggling. Can they come back stronger in the back half of this year? And a lot of that's going to be dependent on these new Model Y variants. They've got the Model Y L, which they've unveiled, which is a 6-seater Model Y. But we've also seen some leaks of a slightly smaller Model Y. So are they going to be successful, especially once we get the details of the shorter Model Y, what the pricing is, all that? Are they going to be successful in using these new Model Y variants to improve utilization and actually reignite growth? Is the expiration of the EV tax credit going to help in Q3? How much is it going to hurt in Q4? And the new Model Y variants, I think, are really going to be at the core of those questions.
Tesla currently has 2.25 million, I think, of an installed vehicle production capacity. They're probably going to do 1.5 to 1.6 million vehicle deliveries this year. So that's a lot of excess capacity that they're not utilizing. If we look at the true capability of all their factories combined, it's probably closer to 3 million vehicles a year. So that's sort of the purpose of these more affordable models, is to utilize that excess capacity, take the advantage of economies of scale, bring down the per unit cost, the COGS, all that, and improve profitability. Because right now they need to utilize that excess capacity to improve profitability, because it's not great to have all this extra factory space that you're not using.
For sure. Bit of a side note, but Elon has obviously been talking a lot more about XAI since the release of Grok 4. Sawyer, I saw you got Grok integrated into your Tesla, right?
Yep, finally got Grok on my Tesla. It's been a little buggy. Like sometimes I'll open it, it says like just error, or it just can't be used for some reason. And I do find that there's a little bit of a lag sometimes for when you ask a question. Like there's like a 5 to 6 second wait before it actually answers. But that'll improve over time, I think. I did get access to Grok's new Imagine video generation feature. I made a post about it that maybe wasn't the most positive, and now I don't have access anymore. So
No,
I don't know if they kicked me
really?
off or not, but I don't know. We'll see. But it's a
Omar,
pretty, for a first iteration, it's pretty good. The video generation feature. As Elon did a reply to me, he's like, this is sort of just meant for quick shareable videos, this version. They're going to have a more heavy-duty model start training on the new 110,000 unit cluster that's coming online in a few weeks. That'll be much more capable, look more, realistic. So look forward to that.
I mean, the Grok Imagine is very fast. It's got a nice mobile app, but when you compare the results to a state-of-the-art model like Google VO3,
that's what I did.
The results are not as good, and even Elon commented on one of the videos and said, Yeah, the audio on this needs a little work. Some of the audio that's coming out is very strange. Um, so, I think obviously this is a pretty important feature to users. Users love image generation and video generation. I think it's a great start for Grok, but the results aren't industry leading yet. So I'm excited to keep testing it out and see what comes next.
I wouldn't even say that your post was not positive, Sawyer. You even commented below and gave some props to Grok for the first iteration and pieces like that. But yeah, funny.
Yeah, I mean,
Funny
like,
that they removed it.
yeah, I don't know if actually they kicked me off or not. I don't have any evidence of that. I just know I don't have access anymore, which is okay. But yeah, I mean, as you can see, VO3 on the right there is clearly more realistic, lifelike. Having said that, actually, the video on the left, the Grok, it does soak up. Like, if you look at the suspension as it goes over the bumps, that is pretty realistic the way it looks. But it does look more cartoony. The colors are a bit off compared to the prompt of image, and so
Almost looks like the frame rate is lower.
it is lower. Yeah, it is. Yep. So if you scroll down, you'll see the image that I used. That was the prompt. So clearly VO3 more accurate to what was asked.
Have you found yourself using Grok in the car for anything yet? Like, are you actually talking to it much?
A couple times, but not too much so far. No, because it can't really. I think I'll use it more if it starts actually controlling parts of the car via voice commands. But so far, I haven't really found a need to use it for asking just generalized questions.
Got it.
I have definitely used it. I mean, I'm not using it all the time, but probably at least once or twice per drive. If I have any thoughts, something I want to look up, something that we're having a conversation about, like just for example, traveling to the X takeover and being in San Francisco, we would ask it things like, hey, what's the history of this area? We had some people from out of town and out of the country. Can you give us some history on this area? Tell us what this is. Tell us about other things in the area. Where else should we go take our friends who are visiting? And it's really nice to have a cutting edge AI that you can just ask questions to without having to pull out your phone and do a search or something like that.
I do really love the integration. Like the app itself is smooth. The actual visuals itself they're really liquidy. They're very satisfying actually to watch. It's a great integration.
And the audio quality is great. Much better than using your phone.
So good.
Yeah, AI is definitely continuing to amaze me. Kind of a side note, but the thing that struck me the most with AI was earlier this week, me and Evan were on a live stream and we were using the Comet browser. And I don't know if Grok, they're going to do, more of like a browser at any point in the near future, but it seems like where everyone's going with, ChatGPT is going to make theirs. And we were just like on like a stock chart and Evan's like, run technical analysis on this chart and tell me if it's bullish or bearish. And the browser just started like adding different indicators to it and was like drop down menus and stuff like that. And it feels like AI is really progressing. And so I can imagine like almost in your car, you're like, hey, I have to get to this location by this time, search for like alternative routes, and like feed me like real-time information on like turn here, or like, I don't know. It just seems to me like it's really progressing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as much progress as we've had, this is just the beginning. We're only going to see these models get smarter, integrated more deeply into our car. And I've really been enjoying using the Comet browser too. Just because it's integrated, it can actually use the browser. Letting an LLM use the browser in that way is really interesting. Like, I've had it fill out my YouTube upload forms, do things like that,
Really?
refresh the Tesla earnings page for me until the deck opens. I said, refresh this page until the deck appears, and then download the deck once it's available. So yeah, super cool browser from Comet, from Perplexity. And we're probably going to see a lot more integrations like this with AI.
Do you guys think they'll make a Grok browser?
Maybe. I haven't heard anything about it, but an LLM paired with a browser, super useful.
Yeah, I'm intrigued.
It'll be interesting once like Grok can tap into the Tesla itself and like let's tap into the cameras, let's say, and like react to what's out there on the cameras. That'll be fun.
That's what I'm thinking, right? Like you're like, hey, Grok, scan my surroundings as we're driving, and maybe it has like an alert mode, like watch if there's anyone tailing me. I don't know. You just get like have fun with it.
Or if like you're about to turn, obviously there's like the blind spot cameras and the car will stop itself. But if it tells you like, oh, watch out for this person in your blind spot, like like just little things like that would be fun.
Yeah. Sorry, just because we're on the tech thing, I meant to ask you about this, Sawyer, because me and Omar both have had ours, but now you've had yours for a little bit. How's your Matic been?
It's been good. It does sort of, I think, not have the best ability to like spot wires and stuff. I find it is sucking up some wires here and there. So the Roomba is better at that. But in general, like it's just so much quieter than my Roomba is, and it's just so I can actually have a conversation next to it. That's like a huge
How
plus.
loud are these Roombas? Because I never had a Roomba, and the Matic to me,
They're
it's
pretty
like
loud.
everyone's like, wow, it's so quiet. I'm like, I can really hear the Matic. Like, it's not the quietest thing. So Roombas
No,
must
The
be so
Matic
loud.
is quiet enough that I can put it on while I'm asleep in my bedroom, and I don't really hear anything.
Yep.
So maybe Sawyer needs some better cable management. But
Maybe.
I haven't had that issue too much.
I've just like an Ethernet cable just running through my hallway right now.
I do like that. The bigger wheels, they can just go over anything, which is great. I do like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I fondly. Did you name yours yet? Any name?
I don't have a name, no.
Wow. Neither of you guys have named yours?
No, I don't think so. What did you name yours?
Maddie. He's Maddie the Matic.
Maddie.
All right.
That's funny.
Yeah. I don't know. I was like, we got to call it something. It was that or Roby the robot. I was calling him one or the other. But okay, very fun. A lot covered here. Let's move to wrap up on this one. Omar, any final comments in regards to chips, Grok, X takeover, any of these items?
Look, I mean, this is a company at a really insane transition point. Just going to X takeover, having my car drive me there, it was just so flawless. It was such a nice experience. All the traffic, lanes shut down on the highway due to construction. It just handled it all for me. I didn't have to think about it. They really have an absolutely incredible product here. And yet sales are kind of lagging. There's kind of a disconnect there, So how can they get this product to a place where it starts igniting sales growth? Because I feel like this is a product everybody really needs. So that's just kind of what I'm thinking about. I'm looking at the Robotaxi service. I'm using this car for myself and just kind of thinking, how do we cross that chasm into making this a mass market thing that average people are using? I think it's kind of inevitable that it's going to happen, but we're really at this pretty crazy transition point, one of the craziest in the history of the company, bigger than going from the Model S and X to the Model 3.
Yeah, it's a lot to come.
With Lars's comment where he was saying the Roadster is going to be sort of like the final swang song for the vehicles with like steering wheels. I wonder if that means like they're just sort of done with the Model S and X. Like, are they just done updating that? Have we seen the final iteration of it? That's going to be sad if that's the case. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're going to stop production of the sexy vehicles anytime, in the next quarter or two. But you do kind of have to look out into the future and think the next Model S will probably be a luxury vehicle that's designed for an autonomous world, not for a driver world.
Yeah. I just think in general, people are accepting that Tesla is not really an auto company anymore. It's more of a technology, robotics, AI company, whatever you want to call it. And the fact that sales are lower, I think people are just sort of okay. They're okay with that as long as they continue to see steady progress on the Robotaxi front, continued geofence expansion. They just introduced dynamic pricing, which is great. That'll likely mean higher revenue although it's still lower volume, I know. And then, of course, the expansion to California. And I'll be interested to see what are the differences in version 3 of Optimus versus version 2, and why is version 3 the one to go to volume production with and not version 2. So we should learn that in the coming months. But I think Tesla's just setting itself up really well for the future. It's just going to take time for a lot of these things to sort of play out.
Great thoughts. Yeah, it's definitely an ever-changing company. I agree with you guys. Right now, the sales, maybe not where they would hope to be, but there's a lot of promise coming from the back end of the company. And it's one of those companies that at the moment you kind of have to have that 5-year vision, which, to be honest, people probably said 5 years ago, right? You got to have a 5-year vision with this company and see where it can continue to go. And it's paid off for the people that have held for a long time. It's been a bit of a stagnant period, obviously, for the stock for a few years. But the good news is you can buy the stock at the same price you were able to 5 years ago. And now the cars drive themselves. So that's a pretty big difference to me, and I like where it's going. Thank you to everyone that tuned in. As always, we appreciate you. A lot of comments on our live stream last week. We love that, almost 100 plus comments. Please drop a comment on this one. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know some insights. Drop some questions. We're going to try to take more of those. Like, subscribe, follow, retweet, share, whatever you got to do. Please do it, and we will see you on the next one. Take care, everybody.